In this episode, we meet George Pui, who's doing his internship as a test analyst at Sintrex Integration Services, and his mentor is Clinton Thomas. This is Empowered, mentored on the job.
I feel this is a very good opportunity for me and other graduates, in a sense that graduates get to build a good and solid foundation in their careers. And then I'm very proud to work for a company that is locally and proudly South African. They gave me exposure and experience that is enough and groundbreaking for both South African and IT and international industries.
Sintrex specializes in management of network infrastructure. And when we're talking about network infrastructure, we're not just talking about your actual switches and the physical hosts that we have. We're looking at the management thereof, making sure that they're running as efficiently as they could possibly, as well as the processes behind them, the logistical side to it. So the people involved in IT, are they working as efficiently as possible? Are they using the proper procedures and the standards to make IT work as efficiently as possible? And then a very important part of Sintrex also is the monitoring of the network infrastructure, reporting on the health and the status of the various network devices. And those software that we use for it, we develop in-house. So along with our development team and our services team, the two come together in order to then develop a program, install it at a client, and then have services along with the program that can then deliver the service to the client to eventually get proper standardized network infrastructure management.
How I got to like IT is I liked it in high school. I went to a high school called Tsakotabo. It's in Mamelodi, Pretoria. The funny thing about it is I didn't actually touch a computer in high school. So when my aunt came back from work, one day, she's a domestic worker, she told me what a boss's child's doing at work. That's when I got interested. So I was like, what is she doing? It's like, no, he's busy with computers all the time. I'm like, okay, what does he do? He said he's a support engineer. So at the time, I had a cousin who was a support engineer. So I went to my cousin and asked him, like, what do you do? What do you do? And he told me that he supports servers and creates servers and whatnot. It seemed so interesting to me at that point in time, even though I hadn't touched a computer. I don't know what a computer is all about. So when I got to finish my high school, I went to tertiary. I went to inquire on the internet actually first. I saw like what support engineers do, and to speak freely, the money seemed to be good as well. So that's what attracted me. In our local university, University of Pretoria, like they hold workshops and they bring companies in. So I'd go and attend and ask questions about like what one would need, what one would actually go about it. At the time, like there was a guy who was very helpful, and he told me like actually what you can do to go through the process of learning. And at that time, I think the skill that was in demand was A+ and N+. So that's when I'd go in and did, at CTI, I did an international diploma. So it comprised of those. And after I graduated with that, I went on and did an international advanced diploma. Then I graduated. Then CTI offers a program where you can study online with the overseas university, University of Greenwich. So I went there and I did my BSc honors with them. So I graduated with that. During all this time, I was working in retail, financing my studies. So I thought I should go and study some more. So I went on and did a support service national diploma with Tshwane University of Technology. I started working at the back at Pick n Pay. There's a packer. So there was this one guy who really liked me. So that guy told me I can come to the floor so he can monitor me or mentor me. Actually, that guy organized bursaries for me from Pick n Pay. So I could go on and study. So the guy was very nice. So he actually laid out the plan for me, a flexible schedule, so that I can go and attend as well as come back and work. So in my day, actually, comprised in work and studies. So I was working full-time and studying full-time. My aunt played a very, very, very big role. You know, we were basically the two of us in the house, and we had a fairly big house. So you could assume that I had to help out somehow with chores. So when I started my first year, she told me that you actually don't have to do anything in the house. All you have to do is concentrate on your studies. I think that played a big role because, as you can imagine, coming from school to work, then coming to home, one is completely tired, and plus you need to wake up early enough to go and study. Like, her support was immense. The program I'm in is a 12-month program. The graduate gets to be assigned a role in a team. So during the process of the year, what happens is we get trained on subjects like networking, subnetting, routing, servers, as well as our locally built software called Intelligent. So towards the end of the program, what happens is you get to write an exam. And based on the outcome of the exam, that depends if you get taken permanent or not. My responsibilities here are I simulate networks, I simulate devices in a network, I run automation, I do manual testing, I do analysis, I do documentation, as well as administration. There's a program that we use to simulate networks. That program is called Mimic. What happens is, if a client has a specific device and a client has a problem with a specific device, what I do is I get to simulate that device to ensure that whatever the problem is at that client, I get to replicate. So that's what simulation means. Automation just basically means doing what the user is doing without the actual user doing it. I get to write code for the PC to do what the user is doing, but without me doing it. So testing, manual testing is me doing the clicks on a PC to test the front end of the PC. Analysis, for example, if I get given a new feature to test, I'll go and analyze how it affects the whole of the software that we built, because it's quite a big software. So everything is interconnected. So we have to ensure that whatever feature that is built is actually linked correctly in the software. And documentation, we have a feature on our system called the help. So I have to ensure that whatever feature that is added to the help, so that when a user wants to know what that feature is about, he can actually go and read on the help. I have to document that as well. We have to document the test plan as well on how we go about testing like the whole software. And administration is basically managing my work, like finding a way to manage my work. I don't have a strict way, so I just do whatever that works for me.
I think our philosophy was born more out of a need for graduates, both by market as well as the company. As a company, we needed resources. We needed people both in the development side as well as the networking side. And we found that it became more effective for us to employ somebody or a recent graduate as an intern for a year, develop them in-house as well as using external providers, and if I may call it this, mold them into what we want a Sintrex employee to be. And when I refer to the need outside or the market, you had all these graduates coming out of universities and technicons, private institutions, without actual experience in the field. So a lot of companies would turn them away because there isn't enough experience being built up, physical experience on the job. And for us, it was a perfect win-win combination. We had the graduates that we needed. They had just enough knowledge for us to further develop them. And at the end of that year, we had, let's say, between 4 and 8 interns that we can choose from and employ them permanently to Sintrex. Over the last 3 years, we've had 16 interns join Sintrex over various programs that we've run. Out of those 16 interns, I'm very, very glad to say that there are 13 of them currently employed. There's a quote that I like. It's actually one of Richard Branson's quotes, where he states, "Train your employees well enough to leave, but treat them well enough so that they will stay." And that is exactly what Sintrex skills development is about. We train them so well that any other company can come to our interns and make an offer. And these guys will be ready to hit the ground running. But at the same time, Sintrex treats their employees in such a manner that they don't want to leave. And I think that's proven by the fact that we've had 16 interns with offers from outside, and 13 of them have decided to stay with us over the 3 years, which I think is exceptional.
Okay, it does match my expectations, and actually it does exceed my expectations. In a sense that in Sintrex, one can never feel redundant. There's always space for innovation. One learns continually, like there's always new things to learn, you understand? So there's no way one can feel like he's out of place or he doesn't have work. There's always work to do. It exceeded my expectations in terms of that. So what happens is the research that I've done to get into IT, I used to go to our local university because I'm from Pretoria and attend workshops from there and see what the actual industry is about, because we'll have resident companies coming and telling us what actual IT environment is about. So in terms of support from home, my parents, I was raised by my aunt. She raised me as a single parent. She was supportive in whatever decision that I took. So what she told me was, whatever career that you choose, just make sure it's in line with your personality. So I told her, I'm choosing IT. And she told me that that's awesome, as long as you love and make sure that you will survive with that career.
Firstly, when we advertise, we'll get our potential or candidate interns through various sources, namely word of mouth. We'll advertise online, and we also have a couple agencies that will assist in that regard. So firstly, the CVs are reviewed internally. We choose the candidates or the short list from the CVs of those that we will consider taking a little bit further. But before we actually get to the interview stage, we also have a pre-assessment that the guys do online. So what they would do is they would receive a link from us, click on the link and perform a sort of proficiency assessment online, the results of which we then use to further shortlist the candidates. The favorable results that we get from the online assessment, those are then picked and we go ahead with an interview. We determine their proficiency itself, their aptitude, and during the interview especially, just their general willingness to work and their general attitude and whether they are a fit, if you can call it that, for Sintrex itself.
Yes, most definitely. I would encourage a graduate to consider an internship or a graduate program. It's a huge transition from tertiary to work. I believe a graduate program or internship program will somehow bridge the gap that you find, because there's so much to learn in this process. When I started, I worked in Pick n Pay as a salesperson, and I worked so that I could finance my studies. So I worked there for about 5 years, and in that 5 years, I learned so much. I learned timekeeping, which is very important in business. I learned how to organize myself and how to better manage myself and better manage the environment that I work in. When I say better manage the environment you work in, I mean relationships with people. Like, it's very important to maintain relationships, especially when you're working in a team environment. That's what I learned, and that's what I believe. That's very important for a person to learn. So when you're at school, like, you just study by yourself, so you don't actually get to interact with people that much, and people don't depend on you and you don't depend on them. So you don't actually understand the process of maintaining a good relationship. So working in Pick n Pay taught me the importance of maintaining good relationships.
The characteristics that's beneficial for us, I would say, was a good aptitude, mental capability, if you could call it such, proficiency, and then it comes down to the willingness to work, the drive to push ahead, to move, and to an ambition itself. And then for somebody that is able to work as an individual as well as work in a team, somebody that we feel can do well on both circumstances, those would generally be the characteristics we need, and just a general go-getter attitude is what we're looking for. The time management is especially tested in the sense where the guys would do the online proficiency assessment, also with specifics to the development team. After the process of the online assessment, those guys would also do a written test, which is timed. So during that period, we can also look at the time management used for that. And then general things like in the interview, we would see what is the response on specific questions where in relation to time management perhaps. Arriving on time for the interview is definitely one thing. We've had candidates that were very, very late. It's a difficult thing. It's not always easy to pinpoint. Yes, it's not black and white when it comes to those characteristics. We've got very good people that conduct the interviews. I'd say that their eye is trained up enough by now to see those characteristics early on.
The one challenge that I faced was finding a good graduate program or internship program, because that will define or may define what your career will be like or map out your career. So I had to sit down and look what I would want in the beginning of my career so that I can build a foundation, a good one, going forward. So that was a big challenge, deciding on a good graduate or internship program.
I don't think I would go as far as to say a disconnect, but there is a gap. There is a gap. And that is not at any fault of a training institute or the companies to where the graduates eventually do an internship or become employed full-time. The institutes will deliver the training in the lecture rooms on a generic basis, so that if I decide I want to go to this company A or I want to go to company B or C or D, the skills will be transferable across all of those. But within each one of those 4 companies, you would have specific requirements and specific knowledge. So I'd say that is exactly where the gap would be slightly bigger than, for instance, if I said I studied a course for company A at company A. That course would then be structured specifically for company A, which would then narrow that gap. So yeah, like I said, I don't say it's a disconnect, but there is a variance between the two of them. I would say what the biggest challenge for an intern, especially starting in this industry, would be when they were at the college level or university level, there was a generic course that was laid out in the lecture rooms. And that was created for the purpose that they would be transferable from one company to another. So the challenge comes in where the intern needs to take that generic information and knowledge and skills that he's built and bridge the gap towards what the company specifically requires. It can take anything from a week up until, I'd say, probably 6 or 8 months at the time. But on our side, for the mentors as well, there's a challenge of having 5 or 6 or 10 interns joining, but not all being on exactly the same level and not all being at the same learning capability or speed as the other candidates. So for us, it's very important also to balance the candidates just amongst themselves so that we give enough attention to those that require more and we don't leave those that don't require as much attention absolutely bored in the classrooms as well. So yeah, I'd say just bridging the gap between the generic taught the graduate level compared to the specifics required by the company. When it comes to exceeding expectations in the workplace, I think Sintrex, I don't know if it's because of the recruitment process we follow and those people involved in the recruitment, or if we've simply been lucky, but we've had a very high ratio of interns versus permanent placement and retention after the internship. So we've had a very high drive from our interns over the last 3 years. Guys that I'd say, for instance, there's an example I can refer to. 2012, one of the guys started as an intern with us in the networking department. January 2013, he was employed as a full-time employee of Sintrex. And by April 2014, he was promoted to the team leader of 7 other guys at a specific client. So you've got that progression from intern to full-time employee to sub-management, middle management level already. And the same applies on our development side. We've got guys that came in as interns. There was a bridge that needed to be crossed when it comes to the generic knowledge compared to what Sintrex required, and that bridge was crossed within no time. And he's made a vast transition from intern level to junior developer, which he currently sits at. So yes, the drive that we see is definitely seen by management, which is proven by the fact that these guys are very quickly promoted through the ranks within the company as well. George is currently an intern test analyst. Now, George was founded on a website that basically brings interns and business together, a sort of portal between the two. It bridges the gap. We contacted George and asked him for an updated CV, which we reviewed. George went through the normal process of doing the online assessment, in which he did well. As George was based in Pretoria at the time, and we are in Cape Town, we did the telephonic interview first, which we found to be very favorable in George's favor. And we then asked one of our guys in Midrand just to meet with George, just see what is this guy's attitude like, what kind of person is he, how well spoken is he in person, and all things considered, we liked George. He looked like the perfect fit for Sintrex, and he met the requirement that we had. So the offer was made to George. Obviously it was a big decision for George because it meant moving from Pretoria to Cape Town, and he didn't have many friends or family in Cape Town, so it was a big decision for him. But he accepted the offer. He came through with full grace. He never had any complaints. And that was almost a year ago. We're looking at about 9 to 10 months ago now. And since then, George has been thrown in the deep end and swam out of it. He struggled a bit. To be honest, it wasn't a planned move. It wasn't intentional. What happened was in the testing team, there were 2 people currently working on it, and George joined that team, and there was now the 3. So out of those 3, we had the intern, who was now George, and we had the senior tester as well as one of the other testers. And the lady in the team went on maternity leave, which now left the senior tester and the intern. And I think it was about a month or 2 after that, the senior tester resigned from our company to join another company, which left George on his own. So we now had an intern test analyst with, I'd say, 2 months exposure to our company. We had just started his skills development and his development program within Sintrex. We've started the program with him, but at that stage he had already gone through what our programs are about, what our company is about. And if I can put it in a nutshell, he's still here. He stuck it through, he fought through it, he managed to perform as well as I would say any of our other guys would have done. And George performed exceptionally well. We're very happy with his progress so far.
When I got hired, my mentor was pregnant, and 3 months into my program, she went on maternity. And a month later, the person who was supposed to mentor me, my senior, he resigned. So I was left alone in the department. So for 4 months or so, I was able to learn and run the department with the help of the support guys. So for any graduate to beat that, it's going to be something.
The common mistakes interns would make, I would say, is initially a lack of focus in the workplace, which I guess you can't really fault them on too much, because the guys come from a school level. After school, they go into the university or the technicon. So all along this road that they followed, there was a teacher or a lecturer or a facilitator guiding them through that process. And a lot of the projects and assignments that are conducted in those places happen within teams as well. And I think it becomes sort of a reality check when they join an organization where they are now, yes, part of a team, but also individually responsible for many of their tasks. And even though they have their mentors, they have guides at work, it is not at the level of what you would have a lecturer that spends 5 or 6 hours a day explaining topics. It doesn't happen at work. So I think a lot of interns first need that reality check to realize that, oh, I need to wake up here, I need to start standing on my own 2 feet. And I think once we get beyond that point, the road becomes a lot smoother for them.
It's very tough for graduates in the current job market. But I will always advise a graduate to be able to willing to start at the bottom and have a willing to learn type of attitude. And I believe unemployment in SA can be solved by one, innovation and entrepreneurship. So I believe those two can help us in going a long way in SA, solving unemployment. Yes, I do have friends that have challenged them with unemployment. And my advice to them is they must be able to stay relevant, like having relevant skills in the market. It's something that is huge, and people, it's like something that they don't recognize. Because, for example, getting a good technical test analyst is very difficult, but yet we have such a big pool of graduates. So I believe having relevant skills can partly solve unemployment. I'll advise a person to look first at his strength and to look at the market at what's in demand. So if you can match your strength with what is in demand and make sure that you can survive in that particular course, I mean, why not go for it? Whether be it in a technical college or in a University of Technology. Plus, like University of Technology and the technical college, they give you like hands-on experience. Whereas in university, you don't get hands-on experience, you just do mostly theory. So I believe like that's the greatest gap ever, because in employment, what happens is whenever you come inside, we want you to hit the road and start running. So, and that's a problem. When you're in university, like you have to switch first before you can start running. So I believe people should consider that.
The advice I would give George, I would say is, look, he's been with us for a while. I think the advice that was given to him initially is taken, and that was just put your head down, start working. If you have any problems, there are 50 other people in this company. Please ask. We provided mentors, we provided managers, we provided lecturers and facilitators, and we provided as much documentation as possible. And George took the advice. He came to us, he would ask if there was issues, and the rest of the time he just got stuck in. The advice that I gave him a couple months after that, when he was now through the worst, was basically, look, you've got a year to prove yourself. You've taken 3 months, you've, I'd say, proven yourself to some extent already, but take now the rest of the year and build on what you've built already. And that's the advice I would give him now. With 2 or 3 months to go, I would say just put everything in. Put in the hardest year of work that you are planning to put in your life, because this year of internship can lead to a permanent placement as a test analyst, which is what every graduate wants. And you have a company to work for. So you simply carry on, you get your employment with a company that already trusts you. Besides that, I'd say just have fun while doing it.
My long-term plan, I plan to be an effective leader within the development environment, to build myself here, to become a leader here. I plan to achieve this by continually studying, improving myself, both academically and socially, and maybe one day I'll probably own a business. I told my mom once I'm gonna have a beach house, so I'm still chasing the dream.